gives us peace. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Let us pray. Gracious God, through a vision you sent forth Paul to preach the gospel and call the women to a place of prayer on the Sabbath. Grant that we may be like Paul and be found like Lydia, our hearts responsive to your word and open to go where you lead us. Amen. Amen. So Paul and Lydia and the Holy Spirit are our guides this morning to show us what can happen when we are faithful in our work and in our worship, and when we are open to the nudges of the Holy Spirit and willing to follow, willing to give ourselves and our possessions over completely into God's hands. Good things happen. We find ourselves in fewer and fewer messes and with more and more peace, the kind of peace that passes all understanding. Lydia was well off. It was really fun when we met here yesterday to practice this little vignette from the book of Acts. I got to really tell Colette, who played a wonderful Lydia, Lydia was a dealer in purple cloth. Now we might just go right over that, right? But purple cloth was very, very valuable. Only the upper 1% wore purple. Our bishops wear purple. It's a symbol of power, wealth, and royalty, really, in Paul's day and age. Lydia dealt in that. That's what she sold. She was a very successful businesswoman. She was wealthy. She was in charge of her own household. When she said that her household was going to be baptized, her household went along with her. Okay, we're going to be baptized. That was unusual, right? Right off there, it's unusual. It's unusual to have a very successful woman in charge of her household, in charge of her business, making a lot of money. That was not a common thing. So Lydia gathered here at the riverbank. She wasn't just anybody. And when she says it's really wonderful at the very end of this, she gets up from her baptism and she immediately takes on ministry. I mean, this is a woman who, she makes decisions. Like Paul comes and talks to her, to the women gathered there, and she's like, yeah, that sounds true. That sounds right. Okay, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to get baptized. And then, as soon as she gets up from the water, she's like, and I'm entering into ministry. And her ministry is hospitality. So when it says she prevails upon them to come to her house, this does not mean you're going to say no to her. You're going to go to her house with her. And from Lydia's house is the base of the spread of the gospel in that part of the world, in Europe. So it's a wonderful story. Last week we had the story of Tabitha. Remember Tabitha, who sewed clothing, made clothing for women, for people who are on the margins, for poor people. And when she died, all of those people gathered weeping and showing off all the garments that she had made. And then we celebrated all the Tabithas here in our own congregation. So now this week, we have the story of Lydia. Lydia, who is decisive and knows what she's going to do and does it. Lydia isn't just a person of business. She's a person of faith. She has a real heart, a longing to know God. That is the only way that you would have found her on a Sabbath day out at the riverbank. And it's kind of a place on the edge, right? It wasn't like the regular synagogue. She was out on the riverbank. So in a slightly different place than you would imagine finding her. She is longing to know God. So Lydia is like an active Martha and a contemplative Mary rolled into one. Now let's just talk for a minute about Paul. I know that Paul has a background, and I am going to teach a class. I promise you, I'm going to teach a class on Paul. Because there is so much work that has been done on telling us a lot more about who he was, the environment in which he worked. And I personally love Paul. I know that he can come off as a little braggy, but honestly, one of the things I love about him is that, when we're baptized and we come into the life of faith, we don't leave our personality behind. God redeems our personality and uses us just the way we are, uses us for good. Also the same with Paul. At any rate, Paul had already made plans. In the chapter right before this chapter, he is talking to his companions and he says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go back through all the places that we've been. We're going to revisit all the congregations that we've been and go and strengthen them. Now I'm sure that he prayed about this. And I'm sure that he, had prayed about it and he had a plan. We might call it a strategic plan. He had a strategic plan. He's going to go back and visit all the congregations and nurture them. And I gave out some maps. So you'll have to share those maps. But I just love to look and see where he had been and where he was going. All of his congregations are in the kind of Asia, part of Asia Minor, around, spreading out from Jerusalem and going up. And maybe I do have one in front of me. So he was, Phrygia, Galatia, Bithynia, all those wonderful names. He happened to be in Syria and Antioch, when this vision came to him. And it was a vision from somebody in Macedonia. Now, if you're looking at your map, you'll see Macedonia all the way up in the corner there. Macedonia is in Europe. He'd never been to Europe. The gospel had never been preached in Europe. But he sees this vision of a person from Macedonia, which is a district, by the way. It's not the name of a town. It's the whole province. And the man from Macedonia is pleading with him, come over and help us. Now, Paul, fortunately, does not say, I am sorry, I have a plan. I already have a plan. I'm sticking to my plan. He's open. He is so open to what the Spirit wants to do with him. He has given himself completely over into God's hands. So when he has this vision, he quickly changes his plan, and he goes from Syria, and you can see here, he sails up to Troas, Samothrace, Neapolis, and finally into Philippi. The book of Philippians is written from that congregation that started out of Lydia's house. The book of Philippians comes from that congregation, and that book is Philippians is full of rejoice, 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 rejoice in any circumstance, whatever you find yourself in, rejoice. And so we have from this man who is willing to follow, willing to change direction, willing to lay down his own plans and go with where the Spirit nudges him. We have the spread of the whole gospel into Europe. All of this could so easily have not happened, right? I mean, if we remember back, there's been this whole controversy based in Jerusalem about whether Paul should even be taking the gospel to those Gentiles. Maybe it just belongs to us Jewish people. And there's been this huge fight about whether he should even be allowed to do this or not. So right then and there, that ministry could have been cut off. Had the early church not been open to something new that God was doing. That could have happened. He could have stuck with his strategic plan, said, no, I'm sticking to my plan, going into Asia. That could have happened. He might have said no. And then what's really interesting, one of the fun things is that we never saw the man from Macedonia, right? The man from Macedonia turned out to be a she. And this little group of women, led by Lydia, might have been not so faithful. They might have said, we're not going to go to the riverbank today. We're tired, whatever. Nothing much is happening down at that river. They might have not been faithful. Paul might have gone to a synagogue, which would have been more, normal to do. But again, he was listening. So all this convergence of circumstances led to this meeting. That's why I say it took Paul being faithful to the nudges of the Spirit. It took Lydia being faithful in her work and in her worship. And it took the Holy Spirit to bring it all together. Now, if you think about your life, about the circumstances in your life, where you are right now, this morning, you may be happy with your circumstances, you may be not happy with your circumstances, but whatever they are, they have led you to this place this morning. And God is here ready to meet you. Right now, this morning, God is here. God is in every circumstance in your life, working to bring you into this intimate relationship with himself. God is in control. You can trust that. And as the book from Lydia, Philippians, says, rejoice. Rejoice and give thanks, because God is here working in your life right now. Amen.